Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. You may have noticed that yesterday the BBC, of all institutions, dedicated its Newsnight programme to the issue of grooming gangs, speaking to some of the survivors who were abused when they were children. Now I can almost hear an audible gasp amongst you because, as we know, the BBC is the epicentre of the Blairite liberal multicultural dream. To them, historically, the grooming gangs issue has been nothing more than an evil far-right narrative. Yet here they are, the liberal overlords-in-chief themselves, giving not just time, but sympathy to this issue. In fact, they even came up with their own data from 2024 that does indeed show that Pakistanis are massively overrepresented when it comes to grooming gangs. Further still, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noted that they're not engaging in, quote, far-right rhetoric by grouping the Pakistanis in the broader, quote, South Asian group. Instead, we can see we have an actual allocation for Pakistanis alone. Remember, we have to control this graph for per capita. So when it says white British at 55%, remember we're still about 80%, at least in the official figures, of the population, meaning we're actually underrepresented, whereas Pakistanis exhibit 13% of grooming gang suspects. They're only about 2.7% of the population. Now, just to provide some context on the issue here, data around the grooming gangs is famously really hard to come by. That's why the left will often say, oh, it's all just a load of nonsense, it's just racism from the, quote, right-wing media and the far right. However, the claim has been in the counter that the police have ignored this issue for a long time, so the rapes, the abuse just isn't being recorded, and many women are speaking out about that. Now, this is exactly why there are still loud calls for an actual comprehensive overview into what happened with the grooming gangs, not the cherry-picked data on prosecutions, because after all, the claim is that the police weren't prosecuting people for politically correct reasons. Further still, we're fully aware now that the establishment are willing to lie when it suits them. Remember when the Welsh choir boy attacked those children in Southport? Yeah, well, this is why people don't trust the system and why the BBC's latest data is rather more telling, because now there's nowhere to hide and these figures probably show a more accurate picture. Now, as galling as it is, the BBC, who've been gaslighting you on this issue for the past 10 or 15 years, are now essentially confirming the claims that they would have alluded to as far right in recent history. Here they are, giving women time to say how they were ignored as children when they raised this issue to the authorities.
So at the time, having found you naked,
no
they didn't do
police
anything?
reports was done. The female officer that found there never put it on the system. The report is there that she found there. But none of the abuse that I told her has been logged.
So there we go, this is issue number one. Now, the counterclaim against this could be, well, this is just anecdotal, it's just one woman. And yeah, that could be true, maybe it's just this one woman. But it could also be true that there are thousands and thousands of more women like this who were abused when they were children and it was ignored by the system. This is why people are calling for a comprehensive report that looks into all the ignored cases and isn't weighted with political bias to suit the liberal regime and the politically correct dogma of the age. And the reason this issue won't go away is because some of these stories are completely crazy, like this one.
Jade, extraordinarily and shockingly, as a teenage victim of abuse and rape by multiple perpetrators, you were arrested by police and charged with a grooming offence. How on earth did that happen?
It was just the police failure, social services failure. I was in a care home, me and girls going out to house parties, and I got accused of taking girls out with me to get sexually assaulted.
And what were you charged with in the end?
Exciting sexual activity on a minor.
And did you understand what was happening?
No, I didn't have a clue. Did not have a clue.
And you were convicted?
Yep.
And what was your punishment?
I went to jail for 2 years. Well, got sentenced to 2 years, done 14 months, and got put on a sex offenders register for 5 years.
And what age were you?
I was 16.
I mean, that is just madness. She was 16 and in a care home, the poor girl, and instead of addressing the actual perpetrators, the police just wanted to pin it on her. Now, I'm not going to play you much more because we all know this is harrowing and it winds many people up understandably. But one final thing on this lady, when she speaks about how she was basically treated like trash as soon as she met these people. And we've all heard these stories. They call them things like goras. That's a slur for a white person. They're seen as almost subhuman. And again, I thought this is a really interesting dynamic for the BBC to be following up on, because they, above all people, have been pushing this liberal notion of racism, that racism is all rooted rooted in power, and given white people supposedly have all the power, only they can be racist. This has been another unsayable dimension of the grooming gangs issue. It's clear that white girls, and I do believe some Sikh girls too, although don't quote me on that, have been targeted by Pakistani grooming gangs, and that shows there's clearly a racial dimension to this. When you throw on top of that some of the language that we're hearing that's been used against them, it's very evident. So again, in simply acknowledging this issue, it undermines lots of the foundations of the liberal worldview, and I expect to see many on the left flank of our politics get very upset about this for that exact reason. But the real question here is why? Why are the BBC talking about it now? They've had 15, 20 years to cover this issue and have called anybody who wants to explore it far-right, evil, racist, and knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing, evil Nazi who shouldn't see the light of day. Well, I have a little pet theory here, and that's that the BBC, the Labour Party and The Guardian all form part of the Blairite consensus. They might have slightly differing opinions here and there, but when it comes to any major issue, they all toe the same line. Collectively, these groupings propagate the liberal regime's narrative of the era. They believe they're the rational, kind people rooted in the science, not held by these atavistic ideas of tribe or nationhood and religion. That all belongs to yesteryear in an unenlightened age, unless of course it comes from people coming from different parts of the world, then those qualities are to be celebrated. Yet as we've explored a lot on this channel recently, that ideology is coming tumbling down, and the system can see that vast swathes of the population are emigrating to reform, and other places they've lost faith completely in the liberal regime. And this is why the Starminator has done one big old U-turn recently. No longer are you far-right and evil for being concerned about the state of the modern UK and mass immigration. No, not anymore. He's on your side and he's got your back 100%, apparently. And when we understand the liberal overlords function as one big block, we can see the BBC is now playing ball too. No longer are you far right for mentioning the grooming gang issue. Apparently there is something to be concerned about, and the BBC care too. In the coming weeks and months, I'd expect Keir Starmer to say something aligning with the BBC and raising concern to do with this issue too. On your screen, only a year ago, he was saying that the grooming gangs issue was a far-right narrative, but we know he can U-turn easily. Yet in the broader context, it seems that the liberal regime is out of ideas. It's tried to silence people by calling them evil and racist. It's tried to jail people for tweets so everyone's very careful what they talk about. And now it's realised none of this is working enough, so they're aligning with much of the public will. Now, I don't think I have to tell anybody not to trust them. I think we all know what's going on here, and it's a big sign that the system is shook and that they really do sense change coming beneath it and are trying to contain it. And just as a final note as well, I know this issue can be tormenting and highly frustrating, but for our own sanity, I think it's worth remembering this is still a minority of Muslims carrying out these acts. I know there are many good Muslims out there. I've met them in my life. I still prefer Europe and Britain to remain a stronghold of Christendom and to be inhabited by its indigenous people, but it doesn't mean I think all of them are bad. In my view, it's really worth remembering that, because anger really can eat you alive, spiritually and literally in Starmer's Britain as well. However, justice will come eventually, friends. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.